You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Oh yeah, baby, that's lovely.
Good morning, it's June the 17th, and welcome to Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News. We're live here at paceradio.net. Good morning, Rev Cindy, how you doing?
Good morning, Al. How are you? I'm well.
I'm not doing too bad. You know, as the intro was going, I was just thought to myself, geez, you know what today is? Today is the 48th anniversary of us moving from the big city of Toronto and surrounding area to the little wee towns that I live in now. 48 years ago. I thought,
48 years.
Yeah.
Got away from that concrete jungle. That's amazing.
Correct. Yeah. Away from the concrete jungle into the area and land of the smells of horse manure.
You live in a lovely little area. The last time I visited last summer it was absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, and quite honestly, right here, we don't smell horse manure very often, but there are spots out in the country where you do.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's I return to the city often, but boy, am I ever glad I don't live down there now. That's just friggin'.
I couldn't do a city at all again. Like I live in a little town, it used to be littler, but it's starting to build up, and it's just kind of like, I don't know if I want to be here anymore.
Yeah. I've been living in these towns of 1,000 or 3,000 people for so long now. There's no way going back to the big city to live would just be crazy. So
I agree.
All right, anything before we get on to the news?
Stay hydrated, folks. We got a heat wave coming.
That's right, we sure do. It's here in Ontario, and it's heading your way. So enjoy. Feels like 42 degrees. So.
Yeah, not looking forward to it.
Yeah. All right, here we go. First story of the day is up.
Coming to us from StratCan, Nova Scotia court rejects First Nations cannabis sovereignty argument.
What? The Nova Scotia court has rejected a claim that the members of the First Nations can operate cannabis stores outside of provincial and federal cannabis regulations. The defendants in the case argued that the provincial regulations for cannabis stores in Nova Scotia do not apply to businesses operating within the territory of the Millbrook First Nation, and that they do not need to pay provincial or federal duties on the products sold.
In a provincial court ruling from June 7th, a judge said the defendant's case did not make an effective argument for the existence of Aboriginal and or treaty rights attached to their cannabis store operations, siding with the Crown, who argued the case was frivolous and a waste of the court's time. The defendant's lawyer argued that the First Nation had a historical connection to cannabis and cannabis trade prior to contact with Europeans, that the development of federal and provincial cannabis regulations did not include consultation with the First Nation, and that the Millbrook First Nation is on unceded territory.
We hear a lot of that here in Ontario. Unceded territory and all that. Yeah, not included in regulation discussions, so on and so forth. The judge rejected the claim that a treaty right to sell cannabis exists and rejected claims that there is evidence that the First Nations had engaged in cultivation or selling of cannabis prior to contact with Europeans. However, the judge also said that they welcome a stronger argument along the same lines. Well, that's good to read.
The matter cannot proceed on this foundation. I welcome a stronger one, wrote Associate Chief Judge Rhonda Vanderhoek in her decision. The court cannot allow the matter to proceed on such a foundation given its role to protect scarce judicial resources and in light of the Crown meeting the test to summarily dismiss. In the words of the Supreme Court of Canada, manifestly frivolous applications. The decision is not taken lightly. It cannot be understated that decisions affirming and defining or denying and restricting Aboriginal and treaty rights are significant for the communities who advance them and Nova Scotians. The court is aware that we are all treaty people, but how the treaties are interpreted must be based on a foundation that warrants consideration. At this time, the foundation has not been established for cannabis sales outside the lawful regime, and the existing regime applies to all Nova Scotians. Ooh.
Mm-hmm. And a similar ruling posted on the same day by Judge Van der Hoek, she also rejected efforts to have charges thrown out related to the 3 raids of unlicensed cannabis stores in the province in 2021. The defendants in the case heard in a court in Truro, Nova Scotia, attempted to make several arguments intending to have the charges dismissed, including claiming that the Crown could not prove that the cannabis was for sale, or that one of the men arrested was not actually working at the store.
The judge rejected these arguments, noting evidence showing the cannabis products were listed as for sale, and the person in question was found behind the counter of the store when police arrived. One defendant also argued that the Crown had failed to prove the elements of the offenses are subject to the Knappel principle, which prevents multiple convictions for a single criminal matter. The judge said that they were willing to hear that argument on a later date.
Another related constitutional challenge by a band counselor from Millbrook First Nation, Chris Gugu, who has claimed a similar treaty right to sell cannabis, had his case dismissed earlier this year after the court found there was not enough evidence to proceed. Since the case was dismissed, the charge challenge did not proceed. Nova Scotia RCMP officers raided Chris Gugu's high-grade cannabis shop, which sits on reserved land in Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia, in December of 2020 as part of a series of raids on several unlicensed cannabis dispensaries operating in the area. Gugu was arrested and charged with illegal possession and distribution of cannabis.
I remember that so well when that happened. There was our Green Mile out in Cole Harbour. They went down the row. And of course, the funny thing is the next morning they were all back. Gugu, who was represented by longtime cannabis rights lawyer Jack Lloyd, staged a constitutional challenge under Section 35 of the Constitution Act, which protects Indigenous treaty rights in Canada. Specifically, Gugu is referring to the 1752 Peace and Friendship Treaty, which promises the Mi'kmaq free liberty to bring to sale to Halifax or any other settlement within the province skins, feathers, fowl, fish, and any other thing they shall have to sell. Exercising our inherent treaty rights is something that all of our people should be doing freely and not have to be harassed by any bodies of government, said Gugu at a rally of supporters outside a Nova Scotia provincial courthouse in 2022, where he appeared to set trial dates.
Gugu was being backed by former president of the National Indian Brotherhood, which was the precursor before Assembly of First Nations, and one of the authors of Section 35. Chief Del Riley, who has argued that the section grants Indigenous communities the authority to write their own cannabis regulation in parallel to federal and provincial law and to sell cannabis on reserved land. You're actually in a hell of a good position here, he told members of the Millbrook community in April. However, in 2019, Millbrook First Nations Chief Bob Gloade also said that such businesses are not supported by treaty rights.
There is no treaty right protecting them in regards to selling, growing, or distribution of cannabis whatsoever. Goulet said. It's not a treaty or an Aboriginal right because it does not state that anywhere. Our treaty rights basically focus around hunting and gathering, not growing and distribution, he said. Individuals feel that it is a right, and they're extending it beyond meaning of how the treaties are laid out in black and white, and it puts us in a difficult situation. And I call that untrue, because what do you think they're doing when they're going out and gathering lobster and fish, and then they are going to the roadsides and selling it, and they are doing that legally? So they are allowed to hunt and gather and grow and distribute. They do that with their fish and with their meat. I see them selling it all the time. So if that's okay, then this is okay.
And remember, he said that in 2019. Right?
And since then, he has changed his tune.
Yes. Since then, council has debated and discussed how to advance cannabis strategy that is respectful of and benefit to all community members, carried out in a way that prioritizes community sovereignty, safety, and well-being of everyone, is what they said in 2021. Yeah. This is consistent with our inherent right to govern and our fiduciary duty to exercise jurisdiction over matters such as the community's health and safety as a whole. We should continue to discuss the development of a cannabis regime and measures necessary for the Millbrook First Nations residents' safety and enjoyment of life.
Yep. Last year, the Assembly of First Nations called on federal politicians to recognize First Nations jurisdictions over cannabis and remove regulatory barriers that exclude First Nations from the marketplace. Thus far, federal and provincial governments have held that Indigenous communities can harmonize their regulations with Canadian law, and governments have attempted, to varying degrees of success, to help with that process. Millbrook First Nation is one that finds itself in such a position, and they have had a rocky relationship with the legal cannabis industry. Initially hopeful that legalization would be a source of economic opportunity for the community. In 2018, the Band Council invested $5 million in licensed producers Zenabas growing facility in Stellarton, Nova Scotia, which opened in 2019, but was decommissioned in 2022, less than 3 years later. Financial statements show that Millbrook has lost more than $4.2 million on that investment amidst a broader market downturn for public cannabis companies.
Wow. Yeah. In 2022, Millbrook First Nations published a report following a community consultation exploring the idea of sovereign cannabis regulations, concluding that there was significant community support for developing Millbrook laws and regulations. A group called the Mi'kmaq Cannabis Association has also formed in the wake of the raids and has argued that cannabis can be regulated informally by the customs and conventions of the Mi'kmaq people. An also almost identical case in Cape Breton, where Indigenous man was arrested for operating a dispensary on reserved land, was dropped by the Crown suddenly in 2022, averting a planned constitutional challenge. I'm kind of upset about it, said defendant Albert Marshall. I would have liked to have gone all the way to the end of it, right to the Supreme Court to justify an inherent right to trade medicine, to trade plants. And that happens often, where it just drops before it gets to that final stage. And that was happening with a lot of the stuff with the patients and the cannabis end of things.
Yes. The First Nations have taken it a step further. One of the bands has given permission to one of their people to open outside of the quote unquote reserve land. And they have come right into Dartmouth and Bedford and Halifax, right in the middle of them, and opened up Indigenous dispensaries. The first one that they opened up in Dartmouth was raided, and the chief went to court because, of course, the people were arrested and all of these conditions were put on them. And the chief went to court and said, you cannot, put these conditions on an Indigenous person. We have treaty rights to be able to hunt, fish, etc., and had all but one of the conditions lifted. The one condition that wasn't lifted was the people were still not allowed to go work in the store again. And funny thing is, a week later, all of them were in there working. So they are, they did it, I think, with the hope of one of them being raided so they could take it that next step further, because the ones that are done on reserve land always seem to be dropped before they get there. And maybe this one won't.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An Indigenous man in BC sued the provincial government in 2023, arguing that both federal and provincial cannabis laws ignore First Nations and Indigenous peoples' jurisdictions. And the issue of jurisdiction around cannabis laws is continuous in Canada as it relates to First Nations and Indigenous authorities. Canada's Cannabis Act and regulations provide the authority to regulate the sale of cannabis to provinces and territories. Many provinces, including BC, along with the federal government, have said that their own respective cannabis regulations are laws of general application, meaning they apply to all areas in those jurisdictions, including Indigenous land.
In 2022, BC's Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General Mike Farnworth said the province does not recognize such sovereignty in regard to federal and provincial cannabis regulations, but it is hesitant to enforce the law on First Nations territory out of fear of a court challenge. Because if they lose in court, then they have to,
Yep.
have to give it up, right? Meanwhile, the New Brunswick government claims it's powerless to enforce cannabis laws on First Nations land. And in 2023, the Federal Senate Committee on Indigenous Peoples called for jurisdiction over cannabis possession, sale, and distribution in Canada.
And let me tell you, those Indigenous dispensaries in New Brunswick, they're beautiful. They're big and they're beautiful and everything's on display and it's
yeah.
I was almost in tears when I walked into this one. It's called Smoke Signals and I'm just like, they're like, can I help you? And I'm like, I just want to like enjoy.
I want to look first.
It was absolutely fantastic, and I make sure that I visit that particular one every time I go through. I absolutely love it. It's just fantastic place. Yeah.
Good. All right, next story is up.
Okie dokie, coming to us from Marijuana Moment. Communities closer to marijuana dispensaries have lower opiate prescription rates, new study finds.
Nice. Researchers have looked at opioid prescription and mortality rates in Oregon, found that nearby access to retail cannabis moderately reduced opioid prescriptions, though they observed no corresponding drop in opioid-related deaths. That's too bad. Specifically, communities located within a mile of state-licensed cannabis outlets had prescription opioid rates that were 1% to basically 4% lower than surrounding areas, according to the analysis published this week in the journal Regional Science and Urban Economics.
Prescription rates were higher among communities located between 1 mile and 4 miles to a dispensary. They were higher still at distances to retail cannabis grew. They were higher still as distances to retail cannabis grew between 4 miles to 10 miles and even greater at 10 to 20. The findings further the idea of a substitution effect, wherein patients opt for cannabis instead of opioids to treat pain.
Yes, which reminds us of Neil, right? And all the work that Neil did before his passing. Yeah. There is evidence that this effect is nonlinear and just diminishes as the distance from a dispensary rises. Results suggest that a 1% increase in the distance traveled is associated with a statistically significant 0.014% increase in per capita opioid prescription rates as measured in the morphine milligram equivalents. Past research into the substitution effect has suggested that medical cannabis legalization can significantly reduce both opioid prescriptions and mortality. The new findings indicate that recreational cannabis laws may have a significant smaller impact on prescribing.
And unlike some past studies on medical cannabis, the new research observed no drop in opiate death rates associated with adult use cannabis. The study was authored by Western Michigan University economics professor W. Jason Beansley and Stephen Dundas, an economics professor who is from Oregon State University.
We cannot know for sure why we see a reduction in prescription opioid use and not a mortality effect given in data constraints. But a potential explanation could be that either the substitution effect is not large enough or possibly those who are most likely to succumb to opioid misuse are not taking this particular substitution. Could it also be that maybe be that maybe the numbers would have been higher instead of expecting them to go down. They might have been up higher if they didn't have the cannabis.
Yep, absolutely.
Our findings support existing literature that suggests a substitution arises between legal cannabis and prescription opioids. They added, but also offer a note of caution about the idea that recreational cannabis laws are a panacea to solve the opioid epidemic. Well, it may not be solve it, but it could reduce the number of deaths.
It could help a lot. And, you know,
Right.
and we've seen that, I mean, from the inside, you know, because of people like Neil, right?
Yeah.
While existing research has generally compared states with legal cannabis to states where the medicine remains prohibited, the new study looks specifically at communities within Oregon, drawing from data on prescription opioid quantities, access to cannabis, and opioid mortality from January 2014 to December 2017, a period that it notes captures nearly 2 years of data pre and post RCL in Oregon. Opiate prescription data came from Oregon's Health Authority's Public Health Division. The idea that has permeated much of the research landscape is that cannabis can reduce opioid mortality through either substituting away from opioids or moderating opioid usage. Our research in Oregon was an attempt to estimate the magnitude of substitution behavior between cannabis and prescription opioids, and also test if mortality effect associated with recreational cannabis was present with more localized data within a single U.S. state.
The study acknowledges that while opioid-related mortality rates appeared unaffected by proximity to retail cannabis, it's possible that other measures of opioid harms, for example, hospitalizations, may nevertheless show an impact. While mortality rates did not appear to be driven by changes in cannabis access, hospitalization related to overdoses may be impacted. An extension of this work assessing hospitalizations in lieu of mortality may yield further insight. And that's sort of what I'm saying. Just because your numbers didn't go down, it doesn't include it improved quality of life or kept the people alive.
That's right. Authors said that the issue of hospitalizations was raised during peer review of the article, and our discussion in the paper on hospitalizations is meant to convey that mortality reduction is just one metric that could be impacted by reduced opioid prescriptions. For example, it may be possible that the same number of people succumb to opioid misuse while fewer people are hospitalized, they added.
Asked about recent findings that many people use cannabis therapeutically without identifying as medical cannabis patients, Beasley and Dundas noted that their study used aggregate prescription data, not individual survey responses. So we simply cannot know what the exact reasons are for people to make this substitution. Well, I know why I did, because I didn't want to end up with an opioid situation.
Yeah,
I made that decision really early.
I did end up with an opioid situation, and cannabis got me off of it.
Yeah, there you go. And I look at cannabis preventing me from getting onto one. So.
Yep.
All righty. Go ahead.
Yeah. However, this type of use is reflective of our initial hypothesis about why we might find a substitution away from prescription opioids when cannabis is more accessible, they continued. In other words, yes, this is a very plausible explanation for our results, but we cannot know for sure that this type of behavior is driving the effect. The earlier study in the Journal of American Medical Association, JAMA, found most cannabis consumers, 76%, reported using cannabis to manage a range of symptoms such as pain, stress, and sleep issues. But only 16% said they were medical cannabis users, and just 31.1% said that their use was for both non-medicinal and medicinal purposes.
Less than half the patients who use cannabis reported using it for medical reasons, even though the majority of the patients reported cannabis use to manage a health-related symptom. This aligns with another study that found that this type of cannabis use is clinically underrecognized. Other recent research also indicates that cannabis may be an effective substitute for opioids in terms of pain management. Hello, that's exactly what for me. The story keeps going on there, but I'm looking at our time, and we're
Yes.
getting a little bit long. So we'll just end that there, knowing that the numbers are maybe the mortality rates aren't coming down, but there's less prescriptions that are going out, and I would think that over time that they would see that. And that's not the first time I've read a study that shows that prescriptions for opioids are down in a state where stores are available.
Yep.
And we got a message. Hector says, "Good morning, Al, from Alberta." Good day, Hector. How you doing, buddy? Hector and I, we're friends. We're friends from, he used to live here in Ontario, and him and his wife, Vaughn, ran Freedom Fields Nature's Ranch.
Oh, wow.
Where we used to go. They had the cannabis cabin. Like, you know, you could stay at the cannabis cabin. It was all themed up in cannabis decor.
I think I remember seeing pictures of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, cannabis, you're allowed to use cannabis on site and all that. They're supporters. So, all righty. We can shut down that story, and we'll move on to the next one as I get things lined up here because I was just too busy talking. But here we go. Story is up.
Coming to us from SciPost, older adults who have used psychedelics tend to have better executive functioning.
There you go. Good news. Other older individuals who have used psychedelics tend to exhibit better cognitive functioning and fewer depressive symptoms compared to those who have not, according to the new research published in Gerontology and Geriatric Medicine. However, psychedelic usage was not linked to improvements in hypotonic memory. Psychedelics are substances that are profoundly alter perception, mood, and cognitive process, often inducing hallucinogenic, euphoric, and introspective experiences. Popular drugs are, or medicines, however you want to frame it, psychedelics is LSD, psilocybin, ecstasy, which is MDMA. Historically, some psychedelics have been used in culture and religious rituals to induce spiritual experiences and enhance self-awareness.
In modern times, psychedelics are considered illicit substances in most jurisdictions. However, studies in recent decades indicate that they can also have beneficial therapeutic effects on various mental disorders. This led to their partial decriminalization in many countries and the development of psychedelic therapy. Psychedelic therapy involves the supervised use of these substances in a controlled setting to promote emotional and psychological healing. During these sessions, a therapist guides the individual through their experience, helping them to explore and integrate their thoughts and feelings. Research into the effectiveness of psychedelic therapy has shown promise in treating depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and anxiety, especially when traditional treatments have failed. And I think that traditional should be modern treatments have failed.
Yeah. The study conducted by Kaylee, Fern, and Kalo, I'm not getting into that one, addresses cognitive decline, a significant health concern in older adults. The researchers hypothesized, almost got it out, the psychedelic use could improve cognitive functions and reduce depressive symptoms in middle-aged and older adults. To test this, they analyzed data from the midlife in the United States study.
The Midlife in the United States study is a national longitude research project that examines the physical, mental, and social health of Americans as they age. The data analyzed in the study included 2,503 English-speaking participants from 48 U.S. states with an average age of 64 years. 55% of the participants are women. Participants completed phone surveys and mailed self-administered questionnaires. They reported their use of cannabis, LSD, and other hallucinogens such as PCP, peyote, MDMA, mescaline, and Prozac is what?
Prozac. Yeah, really. I didn't know it was a psychedelic.
Yeah, in the past 12 months. Sorry, that one kind of tripped me up. They also completed assessments of executive functioning, episodic memory, using the brief test of adult cognition by telephone, and depressive symptoms lasting 2 or more weeks in the past year.
The results show higher rates of psychedelic use among younger participants, women, individuals who were separated, divorced, or never married, the unemployed, tobacco and alcohol users, and those with more chronic conditions. Despite these demographic differences, psychedelic users generally had better cognitive functioning and fewer depressive symptoms, even after accounting for various factors. However, psychedelic use was not associated with this episodic memory improvements.
The current findings reveal that psychedelic use was associated with improved cognitive function, assessed by executive function, partially supporting our hypothesis. However, the same association was not evident with episodic memory. Further, psychedelic use was associated with reduction in depressive symptoms. Although our participants were limited, the results I can never get this word.
Corroborated.
Thank you. Earlier findings in lesser explored areas of research, the study authors concluded. The study sheds light on the links between psychedelic use, cognitive functioning, and mental health in middle-aged and older adults. However, it has limitations that need to be taken into account. Notably, the study does not allow any cause and effect interferences to be drawn from the data. Additionally, data about psychedelic use came exclusively from self-reports, leaving room for reporting bias to affect the results.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, it's just I'm not surprised on that because of the fact that yet again, for years people were consuming cannabis. For years, people have been doing psychedelics, and cannabis eventually became a medicine, and now psychedelics are on their way there as well.
Absolutely.
All righty. Time for us to take a break. We'll be back in, I don't know, maybe about 2.5 minutes. So we'll see you then. You're watching Psychedelics Cannabis News here at paceradio.net.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. Open Monday to Friday from 10 till 7 p.m. or by chance. Check out our flags, our t-shirts, plus our hats, and look of that supply of rolling papers, plus much more. We've got bongs and your favorite herbal vaporizers. Look at all the incense we have, as well as for those who collect knives, check out these knives in our collection. And while you're here, stop in to see Shay at the piercing room, where you can get poked by Shay. Daily deals, check them out. Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford, Ontario.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20, it's so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partner 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420, enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products, make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyendinaga Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
What do you find at paceradio.net? People advocating cannabis education.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, They offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
Hey, we're back, and you're watching Psychedelics Cannabis Education and News. And during the break, I got a bunch of messages from my friend Hector there, and he wants to know about what brand got busted in Southern Ontario. And I can let Hector and the viewers know that we do have one of those stories lined up for the show. I don't know if we'll get to it, but I'll get your answer to you before the show is out, whether we get to the story or not. All righty, here we go. Next story. And before I bring it up, you know, over in Thailand, cannabis was legalized, and now the government's changing their laws. Now it's going to be just for medical end. Next story. Here we go. It's up.
Coming to us from Stratcan, Conservative MP says he would vote to recriminalize cannabis if given a chance.
In a recent interview on a podcast, Conservative MP Arnold Versen told host and Liberal MP Nate Erskine Smith that he would vote for a bill that made cannabis illegal again if given a chance.
Yeah. The comments came in a relatively friendly exchange between two MPs posted on May 31st on Erickson Smith's podcast called Uncommons. He has hosted the show since 2020, speaking with an array of policymakers, politicians, and other subject experts on various Canadian political issues. The interview with Viersen was centered around Bill C-270, known as the Stopping Internet Sexual Exploration Act, the SISE, a private member's bill introduced by Viersen in 2022. But it also delved into the broader issue of social conservatism in Canada.
In that vein, Erskine Smith pressed Versen on what he claimed is a contradiction between a conservative ideology that wants the government to leave people alone with more socially conservative ideas centered around policing people's personal behavior, such as abortion or gay marriage or cannabis. Sharing that he uses cannabis to manage symptoms for Crohn's disease, Erskine Smith asked, "If there was a vote to recriminalize cannabis, are you going to make me a criminal again?" To which Versen replies, "Your predictions are correct. Yeah." This remark has met by an exasperated but laughing no from Erskine Smith.
Viersen also told Erskine Smith that he does not see a contradiction in social conservatives like himself claiming to want the government to leave people alone while also criminalizing and policing some people's behavior. Erskine Smith also suggested cannabis could help with Risen's poetry, which he has shared in the House. If you want the rhyme to flow better, definitely cannabis will help.
Such sentiments from the conservatives around cannabis are not uncommon. Marilyn Gladue, Conservative MP for Sarnia-Lambton, who has a storied anti-cannabis history in the House as one of those who led the charge to oppose legalization in the first place, has long said the party would push back on legalization. Yeah, toaster oven. That's the toaster oven lady. People are smoking cannabis with toaster ovens. In 2019, she told the Globe and Mail that year that the party wouldn't roll back cannabis legalization, but it would like to make major changes to it, including raising the age of access, banning home grows, including medical, supporting larger companies over smaller ones, while also wanting to par back packaging restrictions for food and drinks. That's a nasty paragraph. That's all I can say. Raise the age, banning home grows, including medical.
That's kind of gross.
It is. It is. You know, and I have said there's a chance because of the fact that they took away the patient's rights or attempted to take away the patient's rights to grow, that they would do this with recreational cannabis. And now I'm reading that right here.
Yeah. Recently, another Conservative MP in Ontario has called on the federal health minister to look at issues with medical cannabis home grows. Conservatives have also continued to call for an end to the medical cannabis loophole. On April 20th of this year, Erickson Smith spoke with Gladue on a broad range of topics, which included cannabis legalization. She rebutted Erickson Smith's assertion that the sky did not fall after cannabis legalization here in Canada, claiming that there is under-enforcement of the regulations, infiltration of organized crime, and a 32% increase in drug-impaired driving.
Yeah, I read about that daily in the paper about all these drug-impaired cannabis drivers. Yeah, okay. She also criticized legalization for allowing provinces to manage distribution and sales, complaining about the number of cannabis stores in Ontario. Of course, provinces have jurisdiction around distribution and sales, and any attempt to take that power away would have been unconstitutional. And the number of cannabis stores in Ontario is directly due to the management of the file of Doug Ford's progressive conservative government. So if she's complaining, to take it up with your fellow conservatives.
Yeah. Gladue and the rest of the Conservative Party all voted against legalizing cannabis, save for one Conservative MP, Scott Reid in Ontario, who says the party punished him for breaking ranks on the bill. Erickson Smith, Scott Reid, and NDP MP Don Davies are co-chairs of the Federal Cannabis Caucus.
Yeah. Oh, I know. It's just crazy. Like, why? Yeah, I can see they won't take away legalization like they did in Thailand, but I can see those other things, the medical end battle. Yep. I can see those homegrown battles, and you won't have that medical end in order to battle it in court in order to keep the rights going.
Well, the thing is, we already won our right to grow in Supreme Court. We just celebrated that day, right?
Yeah.
Like it blows my mind that they're like, I mean, my only hope there is that, like Owen would stand up and take them back to court again. Like, listen, I already won this, so like uphold it.
Yeah, exactly. And Hector's got a point when he asks this question. What about opioid impairment driving?
Oh yeah.
I know a guy who was prescribed 20 pills a day.
I used to take benzos like they were candy, like clonazepam and Ativan. Mm-hmm. I was perfectly legal to drive, but I couldn't. Like, to me, that was like drinking. Like, it screwed up my ability to see properly, and I can't believe that that's legal. But yet, if I need to smoke a joint to calm down or to, not have road rage.
Yeah. Well, just as being a patient, you're over the limit as soon as you wake up in the morning anyways.
Yeah, you haven't touched anything. You can't. I went for 2 days not touching anything because I was sleeping from healing from surgery. And, waking up on that third day after nothing, I was still over the limit.
Yeah, you would be because, Glenn here on the news for Thursday with me, he was 32 days after consuming and he still tested positive. And he got tested because he was driving truck. 32 days.
Yep.
They tell us to wait at least 6 hours. All right, next story.
Coming to us from High Times. House Republicans strike cannabis banking provisions from funding bill.
More delay. GOP lawmakers in the U.S. House of Representatives this week removed legislation provisions to protect banks that serve cannabis businesses from federal funding bill after resistance from fellow Republicans. The legislation was removed from the Financial Services and General Government bill that provides annual funding for Treasury Department and federal payments for the District of Columbia and the Securities and Exchange Commission, as well as other federal agencies, according to the report. Cannabis banking provisions of the bill would have blocked federal funds from being used to penalize a federal institution solely because the institution provides financial services to businesses involved in the hemp and state legal cannabis industries. The legislation was included in the Republicans' initial draft version of one of the dozen annual funding bills GOP leaders hope to pass into the law before election season heats up. So they add it and then they turn around and take it out.
GOP Representative Dave Joyce of Ohio, the co-chair of the Congressional Cannabis Caucus and the chair of the House subcommittee responsible for drafting the funding bill, said that the cannabis banking provisions were struck from the legislation after some of his fellow Republicans had taken issue with the measure. With over 40 states enacting some degree of cannabis reform, it is past time that the federal government respect the will of these states. The issue is especially pertinent as the cannabis regulations have been proven to increase public safety and quality of life for Americans, Joyce said at the subcommittee markup hearing for the legislation earlier this month.
My financial services and general government bill included provisions to do just that, to ensure states' rights to make the best choices for their unique constituencies are protected, the lawmaker said. Adding the subcommittee makeup hearing, North Carolina GOP Representative Chuck Edwards attacked the cannabis banking provisions of the funding bill, characterizing the legislation as an affirmative authorization disguised as a limitation, and noting that marijuana is still legal under federal law. Well, change it.
Yeah. Our country has never allowed a federally illegal activity to be banked. And it's important to note that despite some states trying to legalize cannabis, it is still a Schedule I drug. Cannabis is still illegal, Edwards told his fellow lawmakers on the subcommittee. And I believe that it should remain illegal. It's dangerous. And more evidence is being found that it causes irreparable harm, particularly to younger minds.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy.
Oh, that was hard to read, Al.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Although the Biden administration has taken steps to reclassify cannabis under the Controlled Substances Act, the full legalization of recreational cannabis at the federal law is still seemingly years away. While Congress is still opposed to comprehensive legalization, many lawmakers, particularly from states that have legalized cannabis or adult use, want to see federal banking restrictions on cannabis businesses eased. Under federal law and money laundering laws, financial institutions are subject to onerous federal restrictions on cannabis business accounts, making banking services for cannabis companies expensive or unattainable. Yeah, let's just let millions and millions and millions of dollars just go without going through the banking system.
Yep. Yeah. Legislation to ensure equal access to banking services for businesses in the cannabis industry, the Secure and Fair Enforcement Banking Act, has been passed in the House, either at standalone legislation or attached to another bill, more than a half dozen times. But so far, the Senate has failed to bring the legislation, including a revamped measure known as the Secure and Fair Enforcement Regulation Banking Act, up for a vote by the full chamber. After the cannabis provisions were stricken from the funding bill, Joyce vowed to continue efforts to ease banking restrictions on cannabis businesses.
The last I had read, that had passed 7 times, that Safe Banking Act.
Yep.
But had never been put into, the final end of
Yeah, and then the SAFER was passed as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, because the SAFE one was so friggin' old and long. They had the up to SAFER. Yeah, it to me, it's just very frustrating, as it probably shows. They should be going ahead and do that. We're just going to end that. We're going to end the story so we can continue on with some more stories.
Sure.
But it doesn't make sense. They got it. They there's no reason why they can't make it legal. It just seems to be a battle between the parties. Like, someone's got to do it. Just do it. Because if one party doesn't do it, eventually the other party is.
Yep.
So get it done. It's just a friggin'. Next story is up. This is good.
Coming to us from StratCan, new cannabis patio opens in Mission, BC.
Yeah, a cannabis store in BC is taking a second swing at hosting a cannabis-friendly patio space. This time in Mission, Cheeky's Cannabis, which has 2 locations in BC, one in Maple Ridge and one in Kitsilano, First, briefly launched a cannabis-friendly patio in Maple Ridge earlier this year. Then in May, Cheeky's partnered with Mission Springs Brewing Company to host an outdoor cannabis-friendly patio to join the large family-friendly restaurant and brew pub just off of Highway 7 in Western Mission. I wonder if there's not a problem there with the alcohol and the cannabis end, because there are some laws about that.
I don't know. Yeah, both businesses are owned, at least in part, by parent company Springs Group, which also helped to bring the two businesses together to create the cannabis consumption space as part of the restaurant. Customers of the Mission Spring Brewing Company can sit inside or enjoy several outdoor patio spaces. One is smoking friendly and now also allows cannabis smoking and vaping. Overlooking the Fraser River, customers can order food and drinks and enjoy them while sharing a joint with friends. Hey, Steve, this is where we're going next time I come to visit.
Earlier this year, BC began allowing businesses like cafes, restaurants, bars, and casinos that have approved smoking areas to allow cannabis smoking in those same areas. However, municipal bylaws can still be a barrier. A handful of spaces have opened, although many municipalities in the province do not allow these types of smoking areas, regardless of what is being smoked. Laura Rouse, the co-owner of Cheeky's Cannabis, says a previous partnership with a restaurant and pub in Maple Ridge called Billy Miner faced too many challenges from city inspectors, prompting her to launch this new space in Mission. The reception at the new space has been positive.
Billy Miner was a trial, but we really struggled to keep the location in Maple Ridge open, she says. Once we gave up on Maple Ridge, then we looked to Mission, and the Mission bylaws allow for smoking on patios. We wanted to take a soft approach and not disrupt anybody. The feedback has been good so far. The space has about 10 tables accessible from the restaurant with notices on the door that it is a smoking patio. Customers can also choose a nearby non-smoking patio. Rose says Cheeky's supplies matches and ashtrays with the store's branding and signs within the space that note it's in partnership with a cannabis store. Very cool.
There you go. We need patios, smoking lounge patios here too.
Yeah.
What do we got? We got a few minutes. Let's just jump to the last story. This will answer my friend's questions.
Sounds good.
That he was asking about, and then we'll just go back afterwards. Okay, here we go. Headline is almost up.
Oh, there
but
you
it
go.
is now.
Coming to us from Global News, over $1 million in illegal cannabis cigarettes seized after shutdown of brand in Southern Ontario.
Yeah. A brand known for selling cannabis and tobacco across Southern Ontario has had several stores shut down by police amid allegations they were selling over $1 million of unauthorized products. The OPP and Niagara Provincial Police jointly shut down 6 Indige smoke locations between Hamilton and Fort Erie in raids last week seizing tobacco and cannabis products. So there you go, Hector. Indige smoke.
Yeah, 3 handguns, shotgun ammunition, and cocaine were also confiscated during the raid of 9 search warrants on June 5th. Deputy Inspector Ann Goodwin from the OPP's Organized Crime Enforcement Bureau says despite the legalization of some cannabis products across the province in 2018, there's still a lucrative market for criminal networks who have been cashing in on the sale of unauthorized products.
She goes on to say not only is it against the law to sell or purchase illegal cannabis, but consumers are faced with the health risks that come with using untested, unregulated products. Well, you can even with tested stuff too, just so you know, Mrs. Police Officer. Profits from illegal cannabis sales are often laundered to finance other criminal activities, including illegal drugs, firearms, and human trafficking.
11 people now face a combined 34 charges and are scheduled to appear before a judge in St. Catharines on July 18th, tomorrow, according to the OPP.
That's July. This is just still June, so another month.
Oh, right. A month from tomorrow.
Yeah, a month tomorrow. So there you go, Hector. That was the ones who got raided. And, the unfortunate part is the guns and the cocaine end of things. If they were there, they'll turn around and use that type of excuse in order why they should raid all or shut down all of the indigenous stores.
Yep.
It's we have been painted with brushes for years as the whole cannabis community is being negative in time. So I don't expect anything to change here.
No. Nope.
All right. Next story.
Coming to us from Post. Psilocybin enhances exploratory behavior without impairing learning.
A recent study published in iScience suggests that psilocybin does not impair learning and may enhance exploratory behavior. The study marks the first investigation into how psilocybin induces reinforcement learning, a type of learning based on rewards and cues. The results show that psilocybin maintain learning capabilities similar to that to a placebo, with the higher doses leaning to improved learning rates in specific conditions. So psilocybin, which comes from the magic mushrooms, has a long history of use of various cultures and spiritual and ritual purposes. And they said the interaction leads to altered states of consciousness. That talks about serotonin receptors and stuff, and changes to perception, mood, and cognition. Recently, psilocybin has garnered significant attention in the medical and scientific communities for its potential therapeutic benefits, particularly in treating psychiatric disorders such as depression, anxiety, and substance use disorders.
Psilocybin has shown promise in treating mental health conditions like depression, generalized anxiety disorder, and substance use disorder, among others, said study author Andrea Casanova, who is a psychiatric resident at a University of Zurich. Since treatment involves some form of learning, be it conscious or subconscious, understanding how this aspect is affected by psilocybin helps to optimize and put therapeutic approaches into perspective. As a medical doctor in Switzerland, where such therapy is legal in some cases, she was interested to see how psilocybin affected the cognitive capacities required for therapy. The researchers were particularly interested in how psilocybin affects learning when emotional cues are involved. Emotional cues such as faces displaying different expressions play a significant role in how we process and retain information. The study aimed to determine whether psilocybin enhances or impairs learning when these cues are presented consciously or subconsciously.
The study included 30 healthy, right-handed white volunteers with the average age of 29. Participants were screened to exclude anyone with a personal or family history of major psychiatric disorders, significant medical conditions, or current use of psychotropic medications. Participants were randomly assigned to receive other psilocybin or placebo in 2 sessions placed 2 weeks apart. The doses of psilocybin were adjusted based on body weight, 10 milligrams for every 50 kilograms for those between 50 and 80 kilograms, and 20 milligrams for those over 80 kilograms. The study utilized a double-blind method, meaning neither the participants nor the researchers knew who received psilocybin or placebo in each session, thus minimizing bias.
The core of the study was the Emote Learn task, which is a probabilistic learning task designed to investigate how emotional cues influence learning. Participants were tasked with maximizing virtual monetary rewards by selecting between 2 symbols, with one symbol consistently yielding higher rewards than the other. Emotional cues in the form of neutral and fearful faces were presented before the symbols, either consciously visible for 47 milliseconds or subconsciously visible for 33 milliseconds. Each participant completed 4 tasks with 60 trials each, leading to a comprehensive data set of 7,200 trials for analysis.
Overall, the researchers found that psilocybin did not impair learning compared to the placebo. Both groups demonstrated similar learning curves, starting from chance level accuracy and improving as they progress through the trials. This indicates that psilocybin preserves the ability to learn from rewards, a crucial cognitive function. Interestingly, the study revealed that psilocybin induced higher exploratory behavior. Participants on psilocybin showed greater viability in their choices, suggesting an increased willingness to explore different options rather than sticking rigidly to a learned strategy. This was particularly evident from the borderline significant higher variance in responses under psilocybin compared to placebo.
The impact of emotional cues on learning varied depending on the type of cue and whether it was presented consciously or subconsciously. Subconscious cues significantly disrupt learning under psilocybin compared to placebo. Participants perform worse when neutral faces were presented subconsciously under psilocybin, indicating that the medicine might interfere with the processing of subtle, less noticeable emotional cues. On the other hand, conscious neutral cues led to better learning outcomes with psilocybin, highlighting a nuanced effect where the mode of presentation plays a critical role.
Dosage effects were also notable. The 20 milligram dose of psilocybin significantly improved learning rates compared to placebo, suggesting a dose-dependent enhancement in cognitive function, flexibility, and learning efficiency. However, the 15 milligram dose resulted in poorer performance compared to placebo, indicating the effects of psilocybin are not straightforward and may vary from dosage. Moreover, participants who received psilocybin first in the crossover design performed worse overall compared to those who received placebo first. This suggests that initial exposure to psilocybin might introduce a level of cognitive or emotional disruption that affects subsequent task performance.
Reaction times were generally slower under psilocybin, indicating that the medicine may cause a general slowing of cognitive processing. However, within the psilocybin groups, those on the highest doses, which were 20 milligrams, exhibited faster reaction times compared to mid-dose groups, further underscoring the complex relationship between dosage and cognitive effects. We thought that psilocybin would fare equally or worse than the placebo in a learning task, but we were surprised to see that the higher dosage led to better performance compared to the placebo group and to faster reaction times compared to the lower dosage, Casanova told SciPost.
Could that be because maybe they got more medicine, which made things better for them in the results?
Who knows? Yeah.
Finally, despite subjective reports of impaired vigilance and cognition under psilocybin, objective performance measures did not reflect a significant decline. This discrepancy highlights the need to consider both subjective experiences and objective data when evaluating cognitive effects of psychedelics. They say here, Casanova explains that not only does psilocybin temporarily and safely broaden the window of emotional perception, offering a novel perspective on potentially disrupting maladaptive thought patterns, but we also showed that it successfully preserved the capacity of strategy finding and decision making compared to a placebo in a learning task, especially with the higher dosage. In other words, learning is not impeded when an altered state of awareness induced by psilocybin is applied to sessions of psychedelics-assisted psychotherapy.
But as with all research, there are some limitations to consider. First, the sample size was relatively small, consisting of only 30 participants. Future research with larger groups could provide more robust data. Second, the study focused on short-term effects of psilocybin, typically observed a few hours after administration. Long-term studies are needed to understand the lasting impact of psilocybin on learning and cognition. Since psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy can be more delicate than regular psychotherapy, it is instrumental to carefully screen and instruct suitable patients for a session, Casanova noted. Moreover, this therapy is illegal in many parts of the world, requiring adherence to legal regulations and guidelines.
There you go.
Yep.
Oh, got a message. You're welcome, Hector. No problem, buddy. Anytime. All right. we're a little long, but I just wanted to. I'm just going to mention the one news story we didn't get to, and who knows, maybe I'll get to it on Thursday. And that's that in Holland, the Dutch are expanding their program on making cannabis available. So
Nice.
we'll get into that on Thursday. So it's good to see it
Exciting.
expanding. It's always good to see those things instead of going downhill, right? All right. Anything offhand before we say goodbye?
No, I don't think so. Have a great week, folks.
All right. That's the news for today, everybody. Thanks to all those who help bring our voices to you. And that's the Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, as well as legacy420.com and limestonecityhydroponics.ca. And you can catch the next broadcast Thursday morning at 10 o'clock. Same channel, same place, all that stuff. And don't forget to educate, medicate, and do not incarcerate.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, legacy for 20, it's so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partner 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420, enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products, make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road. Legacy 420 in Tyndonega Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.